Welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. My guest today is the founder and executive director of the online support community Uneven Life. He's also the host of the Benzo Free and Uneven podcast. He's also the author of Benzo Free, The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawals. Please welcome in the one and only D.E. Foster.
Hey, Pete, how you doing?
Why are you laughing at me, man? It's not cool. I'm trying to...
No, it just goes on. It's like going, I never know what I put in that bio. So it's like, what's in that one?
You know what I mean? Like, that's the same to me, too. People are like, what do I call you, Pete? And, like, people are giving me, like, weird nicknames. Like, somebody called me the mental juggernaut. So I was like, yeah, just add that title in there. And they're, like, laughing when they're trying to put this shit. So, Dee, why don't you tell everybody a little more about yourself?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Yeah, I actually was a database programmer, screenwriter, crap like that for a while. And then I found became dependent to a benzodiazepine, to Klonopin.
Yeah.
And I discovered that, and we can go into detail on that later. I'll just make it brief right now. But basically, I came off the drug in about 18 months. I had taken it 12 years as prescribed by my physician.
Jeez.
Came off of it, and now I'm 11 years and still got complications. I have what we call now BIND, which is benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction. Jesus. And so it's an ongoing condition that shows its way in all different kinds of freaky ways. But during that time that I've been coming off the last 11 years, I've been working in the community, helping people. And I started a support group, did podcasts. I'm actually a medical researcher now, even was co-author on the paper that just defined BIND. So I was on that paper and also just worked on some guidelines from the American Society of Addiction Medicine too. So I've been keeping busy doing whatever work I could to help people who are dealing with the complications that these drugs can create for some people.
Yeah. Sounds like you've been really busy, man.
It's kept me busy.
Wow. You sound like Pete versus Anxiety, man. Like man generator going on, But man, no, that's it's so interesting though, because they prescribe these drugs, and then it's like the side effects that come with these drugs. It's like it's always funny when you see these commercials and you're watching them, and then the 10 seconds later another commercial comes on. Oh well, we're gonna fill in the gaps from these other ones, but we're gonna have more problems to it. It's like, what are you guys putting in these things? For like, Jesus Louise, man.
I know, and it's crazy, and they promote them, and yeah, you'll see them in media all the time, and people just talk about it flippantly, pop a Xanax or, take an Ativan and you'll be okay. And it's just kind of, it's so quick, so easily thrown out there, but nobody really thinks about, hey, these have a downside too, know? So,
that's crazy though. So like you took it for all them years. They didn't tell you about any of the side effects in the beginning of it?
No, most of the time they didn't. I'm textbook, because most doctors, there are a lot of doctors out there never even believe there were long-term complications. The whole physical dependence thing is this. I'm not talking addiction here. I'm talking physical dependence, which is a physiologic condition. So basically my body adapts to the drug. So when I remove the drug, then I have my whole system just goes haywire. And
sometimes like going through withdrawal, but it's not the fact
it is, but it can last years. And that's the difference. So, so, heroin or coming off a drug like that, the first week or two can be just hell, pure hell. Yeah. But for benzos, sometimes that can carry on for months or years for some people. Not for everybody. That's just for some people, and I don't want to scare people. But yeah, so these drugs just need to be taken more carefully. We're not trying to get rid of them. Of course, they're needed for some things, but they really need to be reduced. They're so heavily overprescribed.
Regulate them better and, kind of facilitate how you're using them differently versus just handing them out like you're handing out McDonald's Happy Meals to people.
Exactly. And as you talk about anxiety, it's like, there's other methods to help with anxiety that always should be your first level treatments. More holistic methods, more, psychological methods. There's so many other things you can do. The medication should not be the go-to answer because of these complications. So.
I tried those medications. I can't do it. I tried one. I don't even remember what it was. It was the worst experience of my life. I was standing still and I felt like I was like running a mile. Like my heart was racing so bad. I was like, nope, I can't do this. And it's like my ex though, she would tell me, oh, don't read the side effects. I'm like, but it says right there, if your heart races, seek medical attention. I'm like, okay. Oh no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like she had a weird approach to things. She was like, oh, don't read the side effects of these drugs or whatever. I'm like, why not? Like, you should be reading the side effects of drugs. You're putting these things in your body. Why are you not advocating for yourself? Look and see what these things are doing. Look at the possible side effects. Ask all these questions.
You need to educate yourself. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that. And that's the thing I learned myself was, you got to be a partner in your medical decisions.
Yeah,
you have to have a say, and you need to research whatever you're prescribed, learn about the drug or the medication, make sure that you weigh the pros and cons before you take new drugs, because we all think they're automatically safe if a doctor prescribes them, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you got to be
And that's the
careful.
scary part, though, is that's what we always were taught, though, is that, you always had your faith, trust in these medical doctors, but it sometimes don't even know what they're giving you either
A
sometimes.
lot of the
And that's the
time, yeah,
scary part. That's the crazy part. Like, these people
yeah,
go to medical school and they're the ones that are prescribing these things to you. And they're like, well, we're going to see what they do for you. And I know lithium comes up as one of those that a lot of times they just throw at people and it's like,
yeah.
no, don't do
They don't
that.
do that as much anymore, but yeah, it's still out there. People, I still see people on lithium. We have a lot of people that come in. Benzos are often one of the many drugs they're taking. So a lot of people who
Yeah,
come to us for help are taking benzodiazepines. And just so people know, benzodiazepines are typically Xanax, Ativan, Valium, Klonopin, Librium. These are the drugs those are your big five of the
yeah.
benzodiazepine class for people that don't know. Because sometimes I say benzos, people don't always know what that means. So it's good for me to clarify.
Right, and
You know,
a lot
yeah.
of people talk about it too, and then they're like, "What is a benzo?" And then
Yeah.
you go
And
into
and
so
I want to say one thing up front because
yeah.
I never want to forget saying this, Pete, so I apologize to interrupt. But one thing
Go
up
ahead.
front is that I know I'll scare some people by what I say. If somebody's taking one of these drugs, number one, never quit these drugs cold turkey, especially without a doctor. Okay, so if you're
Yeah,
taking a drug as prescribed, if it's a benzodiazepine or whatever, please work with your doctor. Do not suddenly take it. It actually can be lethal. It can be very dangerous. So never just stop taking a medication like this if you can take it for some time. Work with your doctor. If you choose to come off the drug, then you can slowly taper. You can work your way off and avoid some of the problems by doing that. But yeah, I just want to make sure people realize don't just suddenly stop
yeah.
taking
No,
a
we're
medication.
not telling you to do that at all.
Yeah, and I know you're, yeah,
He's just giving his point of view for what he did.
exactly.
Obviously, he's not telling you to go and just do this without that because with a lot of those, that is the problem. Once you get started with them, you can't just stop taking them because there's the side effects that are just horrible from it. And a lot of people are just like, I don't want people to get scared, but it's like the reality is that you got to be careful what you're taking because you don't
Yeah.
know because you could end up with buying like you have now. This is what you're dealing with currently.
Yeah, and I work with people, a lot of my colleagues. I mean, I work in what we kind of call, AKA the Benzo community, which is online peer-led group of people who have been doing this for years.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of us out there, and I'm at the extreme end of being 11 years off now, benzo free. There's a few others that are at 13 or 12, but there's only a few of us that are that far out still with problems that are still doing what I do. But most people actually do recover within, months or a year or two. But there's a few of us that it seems to last for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start your podcast though? Was it after
Yeah.
you got your journey was over? Was that when it started kind of?
Yeah, I actually wrote the book first. So the book came
Okay.
out in 2018, end of 2018.
Yeah.
So it was I published that. What happened was I was going through it. I was going on all these different peer-led sites and learning what I could. I was doing research, I was reading articles, I was just absorbing. And I decided I wanted to do something with it, so I turned it into a book. And for a couple of years while I was coming off the drug, I wrote a book. Published that, and then I thought to promote it, maybe I should start a podcast. So about 6 months later, early 2019, I kicked off the Benzo Free podcast, and that's been going now for 6 years, over 6 years. And then I kicked off another podcast called Uneven,
Mm-hmm.
which is more or just my struggle with anxiety and struggle with life and everything like that. So it's not so much benzo focus. It's more kind of what you deal with too and stuff like that, which is anxiety, living with anxiety in the modern world, that kind of things.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I cover a lot of topics on top of that as well. Like I leave it open. I look for new and interesting things. I literally scour the internet and it sounds funny, but I'm looking for interesting stories of people's
Yes.
journeys. I've had a woman come on the show that had explained to her kids that their dad committed suicide and these kids were like 9 and 10. It's like, whoa, hold on. You're
Man.
having to tell you had to tell them what happened, and things like that. I've had a guy come on the show in the beginning of the year. He basically told us he had suicidal ideation that morning. He was talking about taking his own life. He's like, he was talking about the exact thing he was going to do
Yep.
before he came and met with
You
me.
got to take that seriously, man. Yeah.
I did, and when he was talking about it, he was listening to him when he was talking. He was just letting him talk. I was like, okay. And I was keeping calm. I didn't panic at all when he started telling me about it. And I was like, all right. And he seemed like he felt better once he got it off his chest
Okay.
because when he came in, he kind of had this weird vibe. Like he knew something was up with him, but it wasn't really aware. And then he was talking about his friend who had took his life a few months ago before their interview. And that's where it really got interesting. I was like, okay, all right. And then he's like, well, this morning I was considering, and he just went into it, man. And I was like, I was sitting there,
It's
but I wasn't
crazy
reacting. I was like
stuff.
sitting there. You know what I mean?
It's a not a funny topic. It's an important topic Because, how do you address it? Because a lot of times, they say, especially for people who are peers and peer leaders, can you talk about suicidal ideation? Can you talk about suicide, or do you have to always refer? And that's one of the things we're dealing with in our organization. In fact, my managing director, Rachel Mascaro, right now is today in training on an advanced suicide training program. And
That's
so she's
awesome.
in that right now trying to get more educated, and then she'll bring that back to our group. So this is one of the things we do. And just to say, suicidal ideation is unfortunately is a high. Some of the reports have said as high as 50% in people with mind of that thought pattern. And I actually lost a very good friend to it, and I've lost other people, but one was a colleague of mine, and I lost her to suicide through this process. So unfortunately, it's reality. So it always should be taken seriously,
Yeah,
but it also
definitely.
needs to be able to be talked about. And people I think are
Yeah.
afraid to talk about it, but you got to find a way to be able to talk about it and say, look, this does happen. Let's talk about it. And let's figure out some mechanisms we can put in place when that ideation comes up, so
Yeah,
we
man.
can, work around it and go a different direction.
I think I agree with you on that one. People don't talk about it. And every time you talk about it, I like to use the analogy that, it's like Godzilla crushing Tokyo. They like freak out completely.
Yeah,
People go
exactly.
mass panic,
I
hysteria.
know.
Just, it's like, well, I get this situation because this person is talking about taking their life, but I think that people need to realize that if this person is talking to you, that's a good thing. At least they're talking to you. Now, what they do next
Exactly.
is just you don't panic and you listen to them. You don't tell them, just let them keep going. Just let them get it off their chest, because you never know, And if sometimes in those situations too, it's like if you think a friend is thinking about it, ask them. Just go straight up and just ask them. Listen,
Yeah.
here, are you thinking? Because sometimes you'll find out the truth is that maybe they're considering it. And I don't get why people don't want to talk about it. But like some of these other platforms, I was going live before when I did a lot of these interviews. And I chose to go recording only because of like the subject content when suicide started coming up more often with people, because like TikTok doesn't like that language. It gets upset when you start saying things like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. The algorithms will catch that every time. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, but these are supposed to be adult apps. We're supposed to have adult
I
conversations,
know.
but these
I know.
scantily clad women can be on there half naked, but that's okay. But I want to have a real conversation about people ending their lives and what we could do about it, But it's like, okay, I'll play ball with you. I just won't go live here about it. That's fine. I get that completely. So that's why I've chosen to do these closed sessions like this, because it's like, we can have real honest conversations. One,
Right.
two, you don't have people coming in and making nasty comments, because, we found out with several guests that have been on the show that people don't understand a lot of this stuff, and they think it's funny to tell them, oh, go get help, or you're crazy, or, or they look at them in a different aspect when they find out they've tried to commit suicide. Then they treat them like they're the plague. And it's like, why make
Yeah,
these
I
individuals
never
feel bad?
understood that. I never understood that. I mean, I've seen it, but I don't understand it, because it's like, one thing I've learned is anybody can be suicidal at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what's going to hit you. You never know what crap's going to come down the pipe. And when it does, you don't know how you're going to react. And I've seen the strongest people, really consider ending it. And so anybody can be there. So don't think that somebody's weak because they're suicidal.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
rarely the case. Usually it's that they're dealing with something significant, either within their own mind or something that's happened to them, usually a combination of both.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to figure it out, and they're trying to get some help. And that's the main thing, is just make sure people know that there's support, there's help, listen, just be there. And sometimes that's
I've
all
had a
you
few
need.
people reach out to me telling me that they thought about killing themselves, and I was like, listen, talk to me. Just
Yeah.
talk to me. Let me hear
Just
what's
talk
up.
to me. Yep.
Just talk to me. I'll listen. I've been there. Like, I've been there myself.
Yeah.
A lot of my family members have no idea that I've thought about it, and recently I've thought about it. And it was
Pete. Yeah.
okay. So I'm
Let's
choking.
No,
All
man.
right.
It chokes you up I mean, yeah, when my friend, this is a cardiologist, her name's Dr. Christy Huff, and because her story's public, so I can mention it,
Yeah.
because it was covered in the Times and stuff like that
Yeah.
too. But yeah, when she, it was a call I was on the road in Santa Fe, and I got this phone call, and somebody said Christy's dead, and it's like, I didn't even see it coming. I knew she was struggling. I knew she was having a downturn. I knew she was having a bad time. But before that, I worked with her for like 5 years, and she was totally fine. I mean, she had some issues now and then, but I didn't see it coming. But man, it'll send you over the moon when you finally learn that. And you're
it's funny because recently it was a situation. It's something I thought about, and my ex had told me, who's on my currently we're getting divorced, but she had told me to make her the 13th reason why. And I know a lot of people don't know the reference to that. They're referring to the Netflix show 13 Reasons Why, because the original show, before everybody made a big ruckus, was that you could watch it. You watch this young lady at the end of the show just committing suicide. She was cutting her wrists in a tub,
Wow.
and
Okay.
you're watching the whole thing. There's no cutting away. There's just her. You're watching the whole thing. And
Man.
so that's what the big ruckus was when Netflix had released this show, because it also said in the beginning, if you suffer from certain conditions, you don't watch this because it can be very triggering. But when
Yeah,
you
for
get to
sure.
the end of it, I'm like, yeah, Netflix, what do you think the end of this is going to do? This is insane. You have a girl on here doing these things, so but I speak from experience, kind of thing like that too. And it's hard, man. It's like you get to that point, and like I've told people recently though, like, a lot of people didn't know this, but I struggled a lot early on when I was recording this show. And it wasn't because the conversations, it was just, I was dealing with a lot of things in my own personal life. Like I
Yeah.
was in this like black hole size of depression that just swallowed you whole and things, and
Man, I
I
know
told a
that.
friend
I
that
know
and
that
she was like,
place.
man, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
God.
No, and people who haven't been there, I mean, and no offense to them, because I totally get it. I know there are things that have happened to other people
Hmm.
I may not have treated properly and I didn't get. So I'm not putting myself above anybody else. But what I'm
No,
saying
God,
is
no.
until these things happen to you or happen to somebody really close to you, it's really hard to understand.
It is.
And like, with ours coming off these drugs, it's like, I mean, I work with people every day that don't know when their end is, if there's going to be an end of the suffering they're in. And the suffering can be for some people intense. And, you have that day after day after day with not really any knowledge of when it's going to end. That's when it brings people to that kind of thinking pattern. So go ahead.
So, D, let me ask you a question though. Is it mentally taxing for you though to hear these things every day, man? Because it's got to be rough for you.
My wife brought that up this morning. I'm walking the dog. That was a great question. You're dead on. I used to always say that I dealt with it pretty well.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been working in the community now about 13 years from when I
yeah,
started coming off, and yeah, it is. I mean, I think my answer's a little different now. That I think it's taken more of a toll on me than I think I realized it had,
yeah,
and I need to, be a little more careful. That's all. And also, one of the reasons, like, we work with anxiety and anxiety meds at our site on
yeah,
Uneven Life. And one of the reasons I added anxiety, well, number one is we work with anxiety a lot because our
yeah,
drug just such a crossover. But two is I didn't want to always be doing benzo because
yeah,
benzo is kind of this, people are very difficult. It's like working in a cancer ward.
yeah,
That's what it kind of
definitely.
feels like. And it's,
Yeah,
I could see being an oncologist would be really hard because that's what you deal with every day. And every now and then you got to want to come out and deal with, not that anxiety is that much easier. And Pete, you know this,
yeah,
but it's a place where there's not the physical dependence to a drug on top of the
yeah,
anxiety, and panic disorder and GAD and everything else. It's like, okay, we can deal with just that for once instead of just also with the meds, which
right.
they play with each other. So
My thing that irritates me when it comes to just mental health in general is these people that always do these awareness things. Like my company I work for had made this thing about it, and it's like, okay, cool. So what are you doing about it? Oh, we offer 4 free sessions. That's not enough for people. Like, be the first one to tell you, like, I don't feel like they do enough, and it's like they're so far removed, and it's like, it's a going problem. Like burnout is associated with mental health as well, because you burn people. I get burnt out from just the poor management of things that happen. And it's
yeah, and it's
and
also it depends on who you go see. I mean, it's just like,
yeah,
with Benzo's medical advice, there was some really good doctors out there. Most of them
yeah,
didn't know,
definitely.
and they're getting better. Most of them didn't know, but there were some bad doctors that really just were putting people on them left and right. And the same with, I think, therapy and with counseling is that
Hmm.
you're going to get a good counselor, you're going to get a bad. My number one rule is just keep trying until you find one that works for you. Yeah. So
Exactly. They're and the thing too is like I always tell people that start thinking about therapy is like don't stay with them just because you're not going to hurt their feelings if you leave
God,
because they
yes,
know
I
how it
know.
works. You know what I mean? Like don't
Yeah.
stay there if it's not benefiting you. You at
I've
all.
done that. I've done that. Yeah.
But you know
I
what I'm
know
saying?
the
But you know what I'm
feeling.
saying? Like
Yeah.
I was like that too for a minute, and I was like, man, it's just like you just felt like you weren't getting anywhere, and then it's like you switch to someone else, and then it's like you get to a certain roadblock, and then you're like, and you can switch as many times as you need to if you feel like these people aren't helping you.
Yeah.
And I think people feel like guilty, and it's like, don't feel guilty. Yet again, we're back to advocating for your own health. Like if they're not in your
Exactly.
fit, leave them and go somewhere else. You're not going to hurt these guys' feelings. They
Yeah,
know they're trained for
unfortunately,
this.
most of us who deal with anxiety also are people pleasers, and it's a very
Yeah.
difficult,
Hmm.
it's hard for us to stand up for what we need when somebody might be disappointed by you.
Yeah, exactly. And then
And
the
so, yeah,
thoughts that race through your head. Yeah, God,
yeah,
dude. Oh
I
my
know,
God. Yeah.
I know.
It's hard for people that don't have it though, and it's like not a lot of people like when you talk to them about it, they just look at you blank stares, like, and you explain it to them, they're just looking at you kind of weird, and it's
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you explain it to somebody like,
I know.
and then somebody asked me this in a recent interview. They said, how do you manage your anxiety? I said, it's a funny thing I do. Like I'm a huge movie buff guy, so like I sit
Yeah, me
here
too.
and I have friends, so I recast my friends in these movies to keep my mind distracted at times. And one of my other friends that runs a podcast called Humanity 2.0, she was laughing at me because she's like, "Oh my God, now I'm doing the Pete thing where I'm placing people in these movies." And
Actually, I think it's a great tool, man. That sounds
it's
great.
it's great. I'm telling you, man,
Yeah,
it's really great because it's like you're just rethinking things, because I know if my brain locks into something, it's gonna just keep going and just keep going until it just
yeah.
recreates itself into another
Yeah, I
scenario.
was movies as a kid, and I finally became a screenwriter later on. I did that for about 10 years and taught
That's awesome.
screenwriting. So it's like because I was such a movie buff, same thing, and that was my distraction. That was always my distraction was I could go to a movies and just get myself away from it.
Yeah,
I
I'd
was
love
never a
to.
big gamer, so I was more of a movie guy,
I
you know.
play games here and there. I watch movies a lot more than anything. I do play games with a friend of mine and things like that. So I'm doing multiple things.
Yeah.
Everybody laughs at me because they always ask me when I sleep, and I don't, because when I've been doing the show, it's like I'm so passionate about doing it. Like I spend a lot of time on here, but I mean, I sleep. But it's like Pete's always interviewing somebody. What's Pete interviewing today? 5 days a week I was doing it in the first season. Now this season I changed it up. It's a little different. Now we pre-recorded and I bulk record these episodes so that way I can
Yep.
spread them out. So I have the rest of the week to do
That's
anything
a
else I
great way
want
to
to
do
do.
it. Yeah, it's a great way. I know. I'm the same way. It's like I've done it different ways throughout the years, and now I kind of leave them more raw than ever because I just don't want all the post work, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So
No.
going
And
through and
it's
yeah,
hard, but it works out though because I have friends that do production and all these other things. So I have other people that can help me if I need help with certain
that's
things, and it's
good.
been nice. And it's ever since I became a podcast host, I've been meeting more people and other friends I have. So we have a group of people that we all are in. And we have friends that are, I have two friends that do addiction podcasts. One of them, she has one in Canada. She's in there as well, too. So, it's just great. You get to meet all these different people. And like I was telling Dee before, I was talking to the guy from CNN. He worked for Wolf Blitzer for 7 years, and he was the coolest guy ever, dude.
That's awesome.
Even he was complimenting me on stuff. And I'm like, this guy's been a journalist for longer than I've been alive. And it's crazy. Like, for him to sit there and say, hey man, you're doing a great job in the things you're doing, and it just means the world to me because it means like you're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And my name is mentioned more than than the other girls in Canada too. I was laughing about that too. I was like, that's funny. She's like, why does your name always pop up? Apparently I'm doing something right, I guess.
Exactly. There's something to it, man. If you keep doing it, people will find you.
Right.
They'll find you if you keep doing it and you keep doing it well.
So what is your podcast about though? I know you have the two different ones.
Yeah, like I said, the first one is Benzo Free. That's the one I started with, and it was all about exactly what I've been through, which is
Yeah.
dependence on benzodiazepines. I have over 100 and I don't know 30, 40, whatever episodes of that one's. Been doing it for 5 years now.
Yeah.
And so that one's been going good. We're actually getting ready to transition next month into it being more of a live show with maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a panel and doing it within our communities.
That's cool.
It'll become the Benzo Free podcast at Uneven Life. So it'll be part of that. Excuse me one second. Sorry about that. I was
No, you're
telling
good.
for the audience, I was telling Pete before I came on, I'm coming off the flu. And so I had this little cough that kind of kicks in.
He's like, I got cough drops and everything. Pete, I'm ready to go. I'm like, all right, buddy,
I
we're
do.
raw dogging. We got this. Don't worry, man.
The cough drop's the next step if I need it. So we'll see how it
Right?
goes. And then I kicked off because I didn't want to always do just benzos. I just work with
Yeah.
a medication. I kicked off a podcast called Uneven. And that podcast I kicked off about 2 years ago. And so that one's more just an intimate struggle of somebody's struggle with life and anxiety. That's
Yeah.
really the focus of it. So and we don't really talk benzos so much there. It's more about just coping with life, the high-speed life that we're around, the chaos
Yeah.
and anxiety and how you manage getting through. So I mean, I would do road trips. I would sometimes have somebody on. I would just I did a lot of recordings in the middle of the night when I had my
Yeah.
insomnia. And those ones, but people just ate those up. That's like, The insomnia ones are great because so many people have it and they turn me on. And they said, I feel like I'm not alone with my insomnia. I'm there
Yeah.
with somebody and it was a nice thing. So I would just get on, talk about my thoughts, and talk about some often different techniques we can use to help get through it. How do we manage? How do we mentally process this? How do we work through, those nights and just the struggles that we all go through?
Yeah, I think it's really cool though because you get a deeper insight to what people with anxiety deal with,
Yeah,
and even with insomnia, for a lot of people that hear it, they don't know what it's like, and just to hear
man,
somebody
yeah.
talk about it, it's great when you hear people say that they appreciate what you're doing because it's like I'm like I'm just recording what I'm doing, you're just basically recording your thoughts, like, and people don't understand our thoughts sometimes, and it's hard, but
Yeah.
it gets interesting though when I tell people I do a mental health podcast, the reactions are mixed and it's fun because I like to talk to people about it and they look at me weird. Some of the older crowd will look at you kind of weird. Other people are
Yeah.
just like they're interested in what you do. Like
Mhm.
random people ask me, about it and stuff like that too. So it opens a lot of interesting conversations, needless to say.
Exactly. It's probably opened more doors than not for me. I mean, yeah, you're right. With certain populations, you'll say it and they'll go, "Oh, okay," and you know that they don't need to dive in. But
Yeah.
especially with people who are younger and if like that, I say this and like going, "Oh my gosh, I deal with," instantly they'll jump in and they'll want to know more. So it's really been nice. Yeah, it has opened doors talking about, and I just freely talk about what I've been through. I don't.
Hmm.
When I say freely, it means I freely answer questions, but I don't push it on people because I know some people feel like their story is something they have to tell everybody they see. And
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody wants to see that. For me, it's more, hey, if you're interested and you ask me questions, I am always an open book.
Yeah.
But most people I know, that I meet around the neighborhood have no idea what I've been through or what I'm going through. Because it's my own struggle and I'm going to do that. But
Yeah.
if it comes up, I'm more than happy to talk about it and to share what I'm going through.
Yeah, I know a lot of people I know listen to this show. Like one of my coworkers listen to it, so it's always interesting when they approach me. Like, Pete, I wanna talk to you about something. I know you handle these subjects. I instantly know where this conversation's heading. It's heading to mental, and it's like,
Yep.
okay, cool, what's up? And like they tell you the most personal things ever, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't go tell anybody what they've said to me. It's a
No.
trust thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But it's makes me laugh every time people say that though, because like everybody talks about it for me. Oh, have you met Pete for his anxiety? Like I go into some of these places and people are just always talking about my show. And I was like, well, wow. I'm like, okay, you walk in the room, like everybody's talking about you. Literally are talking about you. Shit, okay, all right. But, since I've done this, I've had like people in the top 1% of their categories of respective categories, things like that. It's been great though. And every time you get them in here, the conversations get interesting, and the one part that really got interesting is a lot of people kept asking about me. But, the fact is that I do mostly interviews. I don't do any
Yeah.
single episodes. So I mostly just talk to people about things, which is great because the fact that we're males and we're having this conversation, we're already ahead of the statistics already,
That
with
is
the
true.
suicide rates being 80%.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's a scary thought, man, because like I'm 40 and I'm right in that second most likely range to commit suicide. And I've already been through it myself,
Yeah.
so I can speak from experience. And when you meet other individuals and you see people struggling and you start talking to them and they start realizing a lot, it's like the conversation will change. The dynamic goes to he
Yeah.
gets it. So now they'll
Yeah,
open
and
up
that's
to
a
you
that's a
more.
place I have a big weakness too. I mean, not weakness, what's the word I'm looking for? I have a big I don't know, my heart opens up to men because I do think it's really hard for them to seek help and get help.
Yeah.
And also I think there's a lot of people out there in the industry who may not really know how to address men. And that's the problem is I think we're still trying to treat men from a textbook psychology perspective when that doesn't work a lot of times. It's like,
Hmm.
meeting them where they are, meeting them,
Hmm.
and not, judging them and just kind of giving them an open book to say, "Hey, come on, we can talk about it. We can talk about it over a pool or we can talk about
Yeah.
it over, there's ways to open the conversation with a guy that's a little different sometimes, I think, than some other people. And yeah, I wish it was a little more open where men felt more comfortable getting help but it's not the way it is right now. So
Why do you think that is, though, in your own opinion?
I think there's definitely stigma around it for some men. I think part of it is the way we're trained as men, of course, which is suck it up and, stay, we can handle things and that's one of the things we're supposed to do. But I don't think that's as much as it used to be. I think more I do believe that a lot of talk therapy is designed more with the female mindset in mind, just because that's, women are
Yeah.
better at talking than we are, and so that's kind of the way it's designed. And I don't know that works with a lot of men. And I think a lot of men have then, beliefs about it and they have, aversions to it and they don't want to seek it. And I don't know that it really again, I think they feel like might be judged. I think a lot of men have a lot of trouble opening up because they feel their thoughts are wrong.
Do you think though it's because a lot of females see that as a weakness in men if they have show
Yeah, I
any
think
sense of
it's part of it.
emotion?
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
to it's not to demonize women before
Oh,
anybody
God,
takes it
no.
down. No,
No.
we're not. We're just talking in general from what you see out
Yeah.
there because the interesting thing was when Men's Mental Health Month happened this past year, the videos of these women celebrating, or that one girl especially, the one that got on there was like looked like she's throwing a party that got such a backlash that her
Yeah.
whole family members were like, "Well, we like we're so sorry that you had this woman came on and did these things." It's just like, but you allowed it to be posted there. Like, we got to take this down before it becomes a problem. And I think that's the issue with the internet. It's like, it's a great place to get together, but it's also a dangerous place to be because you don't know what people are going to say when you post things like that. And I had a girl on the show that she was on 17 different medications.
Yeah, I know people like that, and
You know what I'm
that's the
saying?
thing
Like,
is, yeah,
it's
and
crazy though.
I think for men, I just think men and women. I know this is not necessarily acceptable these days, but we're different. I
Yeah.
mean, as a whole, on average, we're different, and so we just need to approach people differently for helping
I
them
think
with
that
mental
applies to
health.
anybody, really, honestly. Think about
Of
it. You
course
approach
it
people.
does. It's just logic.
Yeah.
And so that's all I'm saying is I think for men, just let men, when they finally get up the courage to say something, sometimes they're shot down. And it's
Yeah.
like, and it's really hard for men to finally admit that they have a mental health issue. So, just listen to them. My God, listen to them and let them be and let them talk through it. And, we deal with things differently. But I'll tell you, with our organization, we're actually 75% female at
Really?
Uneven
That's
Lives
interesting.
because
Okay.
benzodiazepines are about 75% of the people who become dependent on benzos are women.
Really? That's
Yeah, we're
interesting.
primarily yeah, it's really sad. It's we got a lot of men in our group, but the statistics are about 3/4 women for people that take
Why
benzodiazepines.
why is that though? Why is it mostly women though?
Some of the things we just talked about, I think historically they were more prescribed to women because
Okay.
of, I mean, God, there were commercials back then on Librium and Valium when they came out. It was Mother's Little Helper I mean, that was actually a different drug, before it, but it
Yeah.
carried over. So the whole idea was, this is going to help women with the hysteria, which of course was the crazy term we used back then. But I think what it is that, um, also right now, I think women are more likely to seek help
Yeah.
and men are not. And so men, I think, won't go in and ask for help and won't ask for help from doctors as much as women. I mean, my dad would never go see a doctor. Getting him go to the doctor was like pulling teeth, even if he was,
Yeah.
his arm could be halfway cut off and he doesn't want to go to see the doctor. And I
My
just
old
think
man's the
women,
same way though. He's like, I don't want to see the doctor because that. But I can tell you though, since I've been doing this podcast, we've had a different conversation. Like he opens
yeah,
up more, knowing what this topic is, and he's made comments before things like just like he's always been a real random person. Okay, so like when you're conversating with him, he'll start making comments, and if you listen to what he's saying, he'll start pointing out weird things and just say weird things. Like he's trying to tell you something in his own way, you know.
exactly.
And it's interesting to hear.
Yes. And that's exactly it, is that men share their problems in different ways. And I don't know that
Mm-hmm.
that's always received. I don't know that
Right.
our current psychological structure is built to interpret how men communicate. And I think it's not really built for that. So it'd be nice to have that more adjusted. But all I know is men and women are both struggling. I don't think anyone necessarily has it harder or easier than the next
No,
person.
no, I
It's
agree.
just they just have sometimes different problems, deal with their issues sometimes in different ways. But yeah, but with benzos, most have been prescribed to women. And I think, again, a lot of it is because I think women actually were smart enough to go to the doctor to ask for help. Unfortunately, wound up prescribing this drug. And they wound up in a worse spot. We're trying to help them out. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's still crazy though. But you're not wrong though, because it used to be the men go to work and the women be home and
Yeah.
be the housewives, do all that kind of things. And you always see these TV shows where the mom's like glass of wine and she's taking the little magic
Taking
pill.
the, you bet you,
You know
that's
what I'm saying?
exactly
And I
what that
bet you
is.
that's
Yeah.
what what I'm
No,
saying. And it's
they
just
were
like,
promoted. They were advertised to women. They were definitely pushed in that direction. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of the key reasons I think why women are more prescribed that drug. And I think the other one too is, like I said, women, I think, seek help more. Man, that's one of the
yeah,
stigmas men got to get over, is we're not great at seeking help.
We
You
did
know?
an episode on negative self-talk, and I had a
Okay.
person that come on that was a neuroscientist. She was on here, and Betsy and I had this conversation about it, and she said that women are more like community types, and men are
Yes.
the hierarchy system. And we were
Yeah.
discussing it. She asked me about that, and I was like, I don't know why we're continuing to say the alpha male is this person, but they can't talk about their emotions and things like
Yeah.
that too. Because if you're the top dog and you're the guy that everybody wants to be, you'll be able to do everything. You should be able to talk about these things.
Yeah.
You know what I
it would
mean?
be really nice. And the thing is, there's a reason for all these. If you go, but I mean, it depends on whether you want to get into like evolutionary psychology, all that stuff, whatever. But there was a reason for it. I mean, back when it was all survival, back when it was all military,
Yeah,
you couldn't deal with the emotions. The men are the
yeah,
ones out fighting and they couldn't deal
yeah,
with it. And there is definitely a time and place for stoicism. There's definitely a time and place to suppress those emotions. The problem is we never taught them the time and place to express the
right.
emotions.
And a lot of them were experiencing shell
Exactly.
shock, which later became PTSD,
You
you
got
know?
it. And so they never got to process. We got to process these emotions at some point. We have to, men
I,
and
I
women.
think I think a little bit too is that we failed them as the military kind of failed them a little bit from the stories I hear. And only from the stories I hear, from what I hear, it's like one person I had, he told me his experience was that he was in an explosion. I'm talking like action movie type explosion,
Yeah.
knocked him out. He came back and said that he was having trouble. So he said when his evaluation coming back, they told him that he was fine. And he's like, no, there's something wrong. I'm experiencing,
Yeah.
and then what it was is he asked him, he said, hey, did you look at my results before or after I came back? And what he told me was that they said they looked at before he went. They didn't look at what his results coming back was. And he had a TMI and all these other things. And mind you, this
Yeah.
poor gentleman can't go to the store to pick up a loaf of bread and come back without
Yep.
it being mentally taxing for him and him being wiped out for the day. And it's crazy because these are people that go and do like everybody wants war, but nobody thinks of the outcome of what happens afterwards.
We don't seem to care. Yeah, we don't seem to care as much, and they do come back. I mean, it was what was called shell shock, now called PTSD. We
Mm-hmm.
had different terms for it along the way. And my God, we used to, both the U.S. and even I wrote this in my book, and the British military, we used to shoot deserters.
Yeah.
We just shot them dead. It's like, or we'd hang them. I mean, this was the treatment for people, even if that was because of severe anxiety, even if that was because of a mental
Yeah.
health or PTSD or shell shock, it didn't matter. We just shot them. We never wanted to know why or what was driving it for somebody.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. It's like we need to, thankfully now we've gotten a lot better in mental health in
Yeah.
that regard. And so now we're actually looking at the whole person, and trying to figure out, what's going on. But yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of
no, you're
crazy.
not wrong though. I read a book in high school. It was called Voices of Vietnam, and it was letters that were collective men that were sending their stuff back over. And some of these letters were just like you're hard to read because you're listening to these guys and they're struggling.
Yeah.
And everything was a numbers game in Vietnam. And this one I remember that stuck out to me as a gentleman. He was like 15 in this letter. He was writing back home. He had to end up having to take somebody else's life that was 15 that was a Viet Cong. And he's just, and I'm talking when he's describing exactly what he's doing to this person. Like, he's like, I had to panic. I cracked him in the skull. He was making a loud whistling. I had to keep hitting him and it was hard to
My
read.
God.
It was terrible. Can you just
You
imagine
can't,
what that poor guy was? It was
well, that's just
horrible.
it. Human beings, I don't think we're designed to experience that kind of horror, especially wartime horror, which is repeated horror, and I got family members. My dad was Air Force veteran. My
Yeah.
nephew did 2 tours in Iraq and came back with issues.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've seen this firsthand. I've seen what happens, and all I know is I support 1,000% them getting support, and getting more
Definitely, I
help, and
agree.
we need to treat them better because, it's a mess. It's a mess what we ask them to do. So
It is bad, man, especially because everybody's like war, 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 but nobody thinks the outcome of anything. It's just like anything like that. It's just like, I think we need to start using more logic than just our, barbaric thought process of just, oh, let's go do this. No, let's not, because you're not the one going over there. That's the crazy
yeah,
part. The people that are all telling them they're the ones not going. It's like, they think this is like preferably this is the video game. These are real people's lives you're playing with. We
I
ain't
know.
playing Risk here. We're playing a real game of life here. These guys are going over experiencing these things and coming back, and some of them are coming back less of a person because they can't handle what they've seen, and
One
I've
of my
had several
favorite.
people like that.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite quotes is I drove back and forth. My folks are in Kansas City. I live up north of Denver, and I would
Oh,
drive
okay.
back and 25 times taking care of them, trying to get them when they were going through homes and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
stopped one of the times to stop at the presidential library there. There's Eisenhower's presidential library is in Kansas. And I stopped there. And his quote, because of course he was a general before he was president, was I think one of the best quotes that really sticks with me. And he says, and it's basically, I apologize if I paraphrase, but it's, I hate war as only a soldier can.
Yeah.
And because basically saying, I hate war so much because I saw it firsthand. I saw
Yeah.
what happened. And
Funny
I love
story.
that. So he was always fighting for peace as a president because he saw firsthand what it was like on the front lines fighting in the war.
I had a cousin that drove with one of the generals across the German line. He was told just to keep driving Could you imagine that experience?
Yeah, no.
Like, I never met him. I was too young to remember. My dad told me about him and said, like, yeah, he was driving across. He was like, you got to keep going. You got whoever was with him. He said, just keep going. What did you don't stop driving? I was like, there's no way in hell I'm doing that, bro.
I
Like,
know.
what?
Yeah.
That's
I
crazy. Like
I've had
the
the
logic,
anxiety off and on my whole life. I knew I wasn't gonna make it in the military, so
right?
it's kinda yeah,
God,
that
I can
kinda
just only
dictated me.
imagine.
But I honor those who did, and that's the
Right.
main thing.
No,
Yeah.
I respect the
Yeah.
people that go over there and come back, and it's like the things they've gone through, World War II, the mustard gas and things. It's just like you
Yeah.
hear these horror stories of these guys, things that these guys went through. Funny thing, D, I got to talk to somebody that was a Holocaust survivor. He
Wow,
was
yeah.
he was there in Auschwitz. It was one of the camps he was in. That wasn't the only one he was in, but it was one of them he was in, and he was talking about it. And the things this man was telling
Man,
us,
this
it's just
stuff.
like it was horrible.
That's
He's
actually
like,
one of we read books. We have a book club in our community, and
mhm,
so we read books, and one of the books was from an Auschwitz survivor. I forgot it, it's up my shelf, but she was an Auschwitz survivor, and
yeah,
so she wrote books about anxiety. And she was writing about how she dealt with, all this sort of stuff, and she, as a girl, survived Auschwitz.
yeah.
Both her parents were killed in front of her when they first arrived at the camp, and then she and her sister had to try to survive at the camp. I
God,
mean, it just blows your mind,
yeah,
yeah.
the guy we were talking to, Benjamin Lesserman, he was on there and he was talking about it. And Ben had gone on. I was a part of a panel, so I got to ask him a few questions. And then I listened to his story on the Holistically Speaking podcast. Hillary Russo was the host of that one. She's been on the show. Hillary had interviewed him, and like he was talking this. I had to stop halfway through this thing because it was just triggering. Because it's like he's just talking about what's going on
Yeah.
in firsthand encounters, just the things this man is seeing. And the great thing about Ben was that at the end of the day, his only message to the world is everybody love everybody, because
That's all you could do in the end. I mean, and that ties back. I'm not comparing
no,
our
God, no.
experiences with benzos with military. They're completely different things. But this kind of suffering for this long in this kind of a community,
Yeah, but you
there's
can
some
relate though.
similarities. Yeah. And
Yeah,
the similarities are this is a long-term torture. I mean, it
yeah,
literally is torture for some people and can be for months or years. And to see that time and time, you asked me about, does it wear on me? And it does, and
yeah.
it wears on you when you're doing it. But my God, it's like, how do you not do it? And I don't know what else to do right now that, except for to keep working as we're working, trying to make a difference and trying to help them. So,
That was the concern of my therapist when I started this show too. She's like, she's afraid to start mimicking the things I hear people start saying, and stuff like that too, because it was like she's like, you're going to get into some interesting topics along the way, and I was prepared for that. I was like, but then we had that oh shit moment at the beginning of the year where the guy started talking about it. So then I went and did some research to better handle those situations, because I was like, well, if we get into this again, I want to be prepared for these things.
right.
And things like that too. And to me, like, I always think of, remember that movie Dirty Works with Norm Macdonald, where the scene where he eats the brownie and he's like hallucinating, Gary Coleman's sitting next to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's the
Yep.
thought I have sometimes for people, because like my own personal experience, like I've got robbed at gunpoint before. Now imagine
Wow.
now I have anxiety though. I'm replaying that through my head constantly.
You're kidding. Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. So I
Jeez.
for a few months, it was really hard. I went back to work and I was paranoid, when I went back, and things like that too. But it was horrible. And now I warn people, because I work in a gas station setting now, and these people think I'm crazy when I'm telling this. I'm like, listen, I'm telling you right now, these are things that, I'm adamant about certain things, and they all say I'm being kind of, dickish about it, but I'm not. I'm like, listen, I've been there. I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I trust me. You don't want to go through this. I have anxiety. You may not, but I'd say it's like 20 times worse for me versus what you're going to go through,
Yeah.
and I had night terrors and things like that at first, and it was horrible, man. Like, the company was great, but my boss, he was like, oh, let's go back and watch and see all the things you did wrong. I'm like, what?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, get the hell out of here. So, like, I told the HR person that's what he said. She said, hold on a minute. Hung up the phone, calls me back, said, don't worry, he doesn't work there anymore. They got rid of him. The minute I had the phone call, she said, can we call back? But, it's like, it's just crazy, man, because it's like, it's hard, man, and it's been rough to get where I'm at,
I'm
and
sure
people
it
always
has.
people always ask me like different things about it too. Here's a fun one actually. Let me ask you this question:
Okay.
If you had to give yourself an animated character, which one would you be?
Wow, an animated character.
So my answer was Batty from Fern Gully, the little bat that Robin Williams played, because I
Yeah.
loved Robin Williams.
God, that is a really good question. I don't know if I could do animated. I could do Muppet.
What Whatever you like.
Because, I mean, I was Animal as Muppet, so.
There you go.
Well, I had the red hair, and I was a drummer. But also just the kind of chaos that's in his mind, you know, with Animal, is he's just always kind of out there, and I feel like he's an anxiety sufferer. Okay,
Yeah.
Animal is, so that really ties with me.
Mine was Batty from Fern Gully, and then Inside Out 2, Anxiety, the little character for Anxiety was perfect. Yeah, that was perfect. So I thought it was hilarious when I saw that. I loved that movie. That was great, though. That was
a
whole
great
depiction.
movie. Yeah, it really was. And I thought it depicted, you know, the different levels, the different, you know, voices we have in our head.
Yeah.
You know, it's just nice to finally put a picture to those. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I thought it was great. We're at the part of the interview, D, where I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I ask everybody the same 2 questions, okay? So the first one is, if your mental health had a song, what would that song be? And now you can break this down however you want to.
Okay. If my mental health had a song. Okay, I'm going to have to go with a classic.
Okay.
This is my classic, and this is because this line has always stuck with me. But I'm a classic rocker, so I have to go back that age, and that shows my age too, being 60. But I got to go with Pink Floyd.
Okay.
And it's Brain Damage off of Dark Side of the Moon, and it's "There's someone in my head and it's not me."
Yep.
Is the line. So off that song, that's what I got to go with, because I just feel like there's voices. I don't mean voices like somebody's telling me to do things, but meaning my mind is broken up to 5 different, 8 different, 10 different things always at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm always getting inundated with all those different thoughts. So I think that line kind of always resonated with me. There's someone in my head and it's not me.
Yeah, that's a great one. Pink Floyd's the first one we've had so far on this show. We haven't
Really?
had that one yet. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
it shows my age.
Well, that
a little bit, but I'm a Floyd junkie, so I can't help it.
Yeah, no, it's a good one though too. You know, because when somebody had originally asked me the question, I broke mine down as like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I don't remember the band, the intro for this. Remember how it's like that? That's like when my anxiety's at full blown.
I get it.
Okay, so my depression could be 2 songs. It could be "Leave a Light On, Tuck Away the Dark" by Papa Roach, or "It Happens All the Time" by Cold. You know, because those 2 were very impactful songs when I go through rough times. Like I'll listen to them, you know. And at the end of the Papa Roach video, it has like the suicide hotline number and things like that too. And you know, and I had a full conversation with somebody about a 12-year-old girl, unfortunately, who took her life 12 hours after recording the intro to the song that's called Weird Hearts. Wow. Joseph had reached out to me because he had heard some of the episodes I was doing, like with suicide awareness. I'd done a series where I had people come on, and there's one of them was really a crazy story. The girl actually ended up shooting herself in the head and was still alive, but she didn't know. Like, but you're hearing from her perspective, though. She didn't realize what had happened because she was in such a state of psychosis that the other person freaking out, she couldn't figure out what he was freaking out about until she realized what had happened. And like the whole time you're hearing this happen, like you didn't know what was going on, and it built up to the anticipation, you know, and things like that too. But he had heard some of those episodes, and he reached out to me. So I invited him to come on the show, and me and him we're going back and forth on music all day. It was like, oh yeah, dude, I love music. You know, I love everything.
Yeah, me too. I was in bands when I was young a lot. So
yeah. What kind of band were you in?
Mostly rock. I did jazz too. I did a lot of classical percussion too. I studied percussion through college and everything. So
there you go. That's
I was
awesome.
Just a drummer. You know, wherever there's a chance to play, I took it. You know?
Yeah. You know, me and Joseph were talking about it. He's like, well, you get to be a musicographer now, because I was comparing all these different bands for him, and he's like, damn, he's just so fascinated by the way I'm just breaking things down, because I love music. Music's just
I'm just not updated. My problem is I did not keep up with modern music, and it's been a problem. I need to do better at that, because I'm still kind of caught back.
So I'm caught in the 90s, man. I was a big Stain guy, Cold, you know, stuff like that. I love
you're
all that kind
just
of
past
stuff.
me. I'm like 70s, 80s, so I'm just a little bit earlier
Old
than
school
you.
Metallica was always a big one for me.
Metallica. I was a Rush diehard. Neil Peart was my idol as a drummer.
Okay.
So did a lot of that, and just did a lot of the album rock through that time. You know, like I said, Floyd, and you know, just all the big bands and stuff like that.
I like Floyd. Floyd is great too. The Doors were really good.
Doors were good. Yeah.
You know, Kiss was a good one for us too. My mom was she kind of listened to like a mix of things. She got me into the Ramones. I didn't know who they were, and then you know that started my whole punk rock phase. I went down that with the Clash
Ramones
and the Sex Pistols.
Yep, you got it.
Know, and things like that too. And you know, the Rolling Stones are there. The Beatles, I appreciated the Beatles for what they were and what they did.
You know, when people finally dive into the Beatles, they start to understand why they were so famous. It's like, they were just They're brilliant. And Stones too. Stones have the staying power, man.
Yeah.
The fact that Keith Richards, actually died 20 years ago and forgot to lay down, I can't help it.
Right.
He just keeps playing. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Like Kurt Cobain from Nirvana had such an impact too, because it's just like, when he
God,
passed
yeah.
away, and then,
I know.
fast forward to Chester Pennington from Linkin Park, when he was really open though about his mental health. Like I loved when he get on there and start talking about it. And like he was telling people he was struggling. People were like, oh, they act like they didn't know he was struggling.
I think musicians, that's a real good point. I like that. Because, Pete, I wonder if musicians are like the first line of men that were open about their mental health, because they were doing this, way back when. This was like a way men could express what they were going through. And women too. I don't mean to make it just one gender. I'm just saying that I know men struggle most of the time to express their feelings.
Yeah.
And I think in music, a lot of them could do that through music and song. It was okay to do it in that venue.
Well, Joseph's and I conversation, we delve into that. That's what he was doing for these kids. He's giving them an outlet. And when he met the little girl named Delilah, the one that we had, the reason we even met was because of her. She unfortunately passed. She took her life 12 hours after recording the intro to the song, because that's her singing the intro of the song. And he was like, he's like, she was fine. 12 hours later, she was gone. Wow. And he's like,
that's amazing.
It was crazy though. But he was like, she came in as she was struggling already. Her mom said she needed an outlet. And Joseph was just teaching them, like, hey, listen, just go for it, man. You're like, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. It's all right. It's how it works in songwriting, it's the great thing about it. You can express it any way you want to. It's music. That's the great thing about it,
Exactly.
But you may be right though. Like I said, but Chester was very open about it. A lot of these interviews he did. He told people he struggled, and people are just like, my favorite thing is when people are asked that, like, oh, there he's gone, and they were shocked. I'm like, you really shocked? This guy was open about his mental health issues. He told you he was struggling, and he just struggled. He was open about it. He's probably the most open person I knew in the 90s about his struggles he had dealt with, and he'd go on and talk about it all the time. And it was always so fascinating to me that, people are just shocked about it. I'm like, I don't know how you're shocked when the guy was completely open. I loved him for that. You couldn't be any.
I think people sometimes think people are just talking.
Yeah.
And don't really realize sometimes that they're being serious, or they're even calling for help, and they don't even know it. And unfortunately, you got to listen to what people are saying, because I think especially around that subject, people are rarely making it up, Some people are.
My favorite one, though, I learned about was Robin Williams and the things that guy went through.
I was diehard,
I loved Robin Williams made the greatest quote ever when he was talking about, always be kind to somebody because you don't know what they're going through. And it's like, it sticks with you.
That actually is a quote I was almost going to bring up myself, because that's probably my favorite quote from Robin. I was a huge fan.
Me too. I
remember I was actually working downtown Boulder, Colorado when he died.
Yeah.
And there's a Boulder Theater right there with the traditional marquee, the neon kind of marquee.
Yeah.
And after it happened, I walked out to go for a walk because the house where they shot Mork and Mindy was just 4 blocks down. So I was going to go walk in front of the house and stuff, and came back. When I came back, I saw the marquee, and the marquee just said Nano, which was his term he said at Mork and Mindy, Nano Nano. And so that's all it said. And I just thought that really stuck with me, because it was a very simple way of honoring him, you know, when he died. But it's another person who struggled his entire life with mental health.
Yeah,
he always struggled.
Really hard,
and he talked about it. I mean, he talked about it in his stand-up. He talked about it in his movies. But he always struggled in it. And when he got a diagnosis that wasn't good, that's more than he could take.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Man. Yeah, man, he was always my idol. I loved him. I loved everything he did. Curtis Farley was another one too that I like. Once you really heard the backstory of Chris's story, where he struggled a lot to fit in with people and things like that too. It was like people didn't realize that this poor guy was going through as bad as he was, And like I said, that quote with Robin Williams is what really, before I started this podcast, really stuck with me, because like I remember reading that, and it's the same thing I thought of every time I meet these people. It's like you never know what these people are going through. So anytime I meet somebody now, I'm always just really polite to them, try to make their day if I can.
Well, and not only that, but I think I don't know there's anybody out there who's living a life of luxury.
Right, exactly.
I really don't, because I'm not gonna, I don't want to swear, but it's like everybody has their stuff, is the way I'll say it, is a quote that I carry with me all the time, because, you don't know what somebody else is going through. If somebody gets me to talk about my experience with benzos and the stuff I've been through, and then I find out, well, this is great. This is their fourth time going through, chemo for breast cancer. It's like, oh, okay, and I had no clue. It's like you don't know. Most people are struggling about something or several things in their life. So don't assume your life is more difficult than somebody else's right now. You don't know. You just don't know.
Exactly. So, Dee, before we wrap up, I want to ask
Yeah.
you a question, though. If you could break the stigma about mental health, now I say this as, if there's something you hear people that you want them to stop believing, what would you say that thing would be?
Stop believing.
Just anything. Anything you can think of that you feel like
I would say that
I'd
say the words that I would think would be the best thing I want you to stop believing is nobody understands, because that's not true. That is not true. And we proved it with what we're doing. I think a lot of people have proved it, is that, yeah, nobody's going to have your exact story, but people out there have gone through what you're going through, are going through what you're going through. Now with the technology of today, you can communicate with people through support groups, through podcasts, through books, through so many different ways. Somebody else has been where you are. Mm-hmm. Do not take this journey alone. You can find people to go along with you. And I think that would probably be my number one thing, which is, there's people there to help you. There are people out there to help.
I absolutely love it, man. And with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Dee, I'd like to thank you so much for being here, man. It's so great having you. It's such a refreshing conversation. I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate what you're doing, man. Like, it's a rough, but you go through every single day, man. And I'm sure everybody appreciates the people that you come in contact with are really thankful for that, man. So just keep going, dude, no matter what.
I appreciate it. Hey, thanks so much, Pete. It's been a true pleasure.
Definitely, man. And with that being said, guys, you know where to find me on Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to Pandora Radio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, ask nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health today? So bad, breaking my neck. It's a sign of